We're not going to talk a lot about that, but you know what I'm talking about. And the problem I have with these ideas is not so much having an issue with people that fit into any sort of box or category, but it's really more so to say that's not really exactly what we need right now. I don't think that the key solution for Black people in terms of progress is for us to sit around and figure out how we can decide whether our son needs to have his penis or not, or whatever people are talking about. Don't get me wrong, that's fine. Whatever people do, that's fine. But that should be secondary to the primary things that are happening. The key ideas here, the things that are restricting your freedom are one, you're not able to educate your own kids, so they're growing up with a lot of crazy ideas about how the world's supposed to work, and it's really ruining the community in a lot of ways. Two, your economics is out of whack. You're training even your best and brightest to go work for white people. That's why the wealth gap has not increased. It's actually, the wealth gap has not decreased. It's actually increased. So you're in a worse economic position now than you were in 1968, and that's because the civil rights movement didn't do a whole lot for you in that area. The third is family. We need family because family is the centerpiece of building a strong community, which is a centerpiece of building wealth. Family is the key to building wealth, and so when you have, for example, things where again ideas power. Let's go back to power. Power, the ability to impose your will onto other people, external forces imposing their power onto the Black community. What you have is, for example, among many things, the Black exploitation era, where they mass marketed this idea to the Black man that you are best off when you are a complete pimp and a predator on women and children. When you hate women, mistreat women, disrespect women, that makes you more of a man, and you are supposed to have a bunch of kids and abandon those kids and have your family in complete disarray, to the point where at your funeral everybody's confused. They can't even pay for your funeral. A guy sent me a note the other day where he said, man, your father and my father must have been the same person. I said, really, what do you mean? He said, my daddy, when he died, he said we had to rent a casket for him because he had no life insurance policy. He said he never gave me anything, never even gave me a coloring book, and he was never there for me at any point in my life. And we look right past that. We don't understand that this should actually be like treated the same way you treat a rapist. A father who abandons their family should be treated no differently from a rapist, if you ask me. Why do I say that? Well, because the father, the head of the family, is a critical piece of that family. The head of the family is the person that holds it together. When there's bad leadership in a family, everything kind of crumbles and falls apart. I sat today with my friend. I'm going to introduce him to him one day. His name is Chris Davis, and Chris is actually arguably the leading expert on the planet in business automation. Big companies, Infusionsoft and Lead Pages, and all them, are always trying to hire him because he's the best in the world at what he does. And Chris and I were talking about our children, and our kids play together, and we were talking about our role as a father, and protecting our daughters, and just kind of what that means. And one of the things that we both kind of talked about and reflected on, and many of you have stories that would match our own, is how much complete chaos you have when the father is not doing his job, when the father does not set the tone, when the father is off duty, he's not on the job, he's off the job, and it just creates a big mess, right? And so where does this go back to power and everything else? Well, a big way that people impose their power onto the Black community, or the easiest way, is when there are no families to protect the community from all these outside forces. When there is no stronghold, when there's nothing blocking the external influence, you start getting all kinds of crazy things that are happening inside households, in the streets. Look down at down west side of Chicago, little teenage kids shooting each other, blowing each other's brains out at the age of 14. Little girls, getting into only God knows what type situations, and it's a complete mess, economically and otherwise. And also economically speaking, the lowest net worth in America is that of a single Black mother with children. The second lowest net worth in America is a Black man that has lots of children with lots of women, because the child support court will zap wealth out of that man's pocket to the point where he has a tough time building anything. And the mother is trying to do 50 jobs at once and can't really do all those jobs at once. So rebuilding the family, learning how to relate to each other, is literally one of the most important things that we have to figure out, because you're better off as a group. If I want to impose my power on something, think about it like this. Any military people in the room, if you're military, raise your hand, shout yourselves out, thank you for your service, because the soldiers will get this. If you are fighting against a rival platoon or something, right? There's another group of soldiers that are coming to get you. And let's say that they had the ability to force you to scatter, to split up into 5 different directions, right? Let's say that they did something that got you all scrambling in different directions. Would it be easier or harder for them to kill you? Would it be easier if you were spread out and sort of fighting them and they were picking you off one by one? Or would it be harder to fight you if you were fighting as a team and coordinated and working in the same strategy, right? Well, it's obviously easier for me to get you, for that group to kill you, if you're scattered, if you're all over the place, right? Like fighting a fist. Like if you take a fist and you fight each finger one by one, then I can defeat this fist. But when the fist is together as one unit, it's a much harder ordeal for me, right? So effectively, the destruction of the family is something that was done all the way back since slavery. It's something that's still done to this day. It's something that imposes on our ability to obtain power, which therefore undermines our ability to build wealth. Wealth and power are deeply connected, and wealth, power, and freedom are all just kind of like siblings with each other. They're all connected to each other. Wealth breeds power, which breeds freedom. The freest person in the room is typically the person with the most power, and the most powerful person in the room, in many cases, might be the person that has the most wealth, or at the very least, the wealthiest person in the room is probably going to have power. Although there are other forms of power besides wealth, right? So does that make sense? I hope that makes sense, right? So unity, power, and wealth and freedom are all kind of connected. So we have to focus on that unity piece, even on a microcosmic scale. So unity, in my view, doesn't mean every black person loves every other black person, because I'd be a hypocrite and a liar if I said that, because I don't love every black person. Some black people I damn near would throw them off a cliff if I could, because they just make me mad and drive me crazy. But the question is, who's your clique? Who is your team? Who's your group? Your first clique, your first team is your family, right? And so getting that one unit in lockstep, where everyone is operating on a similar code of conduct, is your first line of defense in terms of having power and protection in the society. When you don't have that, when the family falls apart, the father and the protection of the family gets replaced by the state, right? So when parents hand over their right and ability to educate their own children, they're doing what? They're handing their child over to the state and saying, please educate my child. When the black woman can't depend on the black man to help her figure out things economically, well, next thing you know, she and the kids are all going to work for a white man, right? So the white man becomes the man of the house. The government becomes the man of the house. The school system and the media become greater influences in the household than the parents, who are not there to provide a united front to make sure that you control the culture in that space. So I encourage you, just in terms of practical applications of this power lesson that we're talking about here in Dr. Claud Anderson's book, is to control the culture in the home in which you reside. In your house, the culture should be defined primarily by you. There's going to be some outside influence. The TV will be on, the radio will be on. They're going to hear things from kids at school, but the culture can be shaped by you, by being very intentional about what you want, what value systems you want your children to have. And that's going to come in handy because life gets hard. Things happen. People lose their jobs, people are under attack or whatever. And when you have a strong family unit, you're able to defend yourself against all these outside forces. For example, think about it when you were a little kid. If you got into a fight with a kid, let's say there's a kid you wanted to fight and you knew you could beat him up, right? This is back in the day when kids used to fight. I guess now kids don't fight no more because they're scared of school shootings and all that. But back when I grew up, maybe some of you too, you'd have fights, right? After school, everybody knew when the big fight was going to happen, right? So let's say you're about to fight a kid and you know you can whoop that kid and you're not even worried about the fight. So you're ready to throw down because you know you're going to win. Fine. Now let's change the scenario. Imagine if that kid had, 4 really angry cousins who were very unified and a couple of siblings that were bigger than you, that were ready to defend their sibling. Would you fight that kid? Would you jump in that fight if you know that he's got people that have his back? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't fight that kid. You'd be scared of him, right? Because he has the protection of unity. He has power. He has power. See, so power isn't just about imposing your will on other people. It's about defending your right to freedom. That kid has freedom. He can go to school, say whatever he wants. He can talk about your mama, and you ain't gonna do nothing because you know he's got power, because he's got those big cousins that'll whoop your ass if you get out of line, right? So that's kind of how the world works. The world the whole world literally operates kind of like that. If you don't have a defense, then everyone else will use their power to impose their will upon you and take away your freedom. And if you can't defend your freedom, you will lose it, particularly when you're dealing with America and capitalism and all that stuff. Okay. All right. So next, let me read a little bit more. And let's see here. This is on page 29, Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claud Anderson. It says a true power holder can enforce its decisions and will on the less powerful by applying or threatening to apply penalties or force. Or it can elect to secure compliance to its wishes and decisions by providing or offering rewards. The final decision on the use of any particular form of social control belongs to the power holder. Social control. Let's remember that, right? Because social engineering is a big thing that's used against Black people. Those holding power have used it effectively in organizing and controlling Blacks to the benefit of larger society. Power has determined the quality of Black life. Social powers external to Black communities have controlled and shaped Black people's lives and behavior for more than 4 centuries. So I kind of read this. So let me jump to the next section on the kinds of power. To advance the self-interest of an individual or group, humans use numerous kinds of power. The most common forms of power in Black-white relations are group power. Now write this down. Take notes on this. Group power, institutional power, wealth power, numerical population power, political power, and voting power. All right, so let's do an inventory real quick on where we are, the state of Black America right now. We're about to have a State of Black America convention right here in this room. And we're going to go down each type of power, and I want you to give me a yes or no if you believe that Black people have this form of power and if we're using it in a way that's helping us achieve our goals. Group power. Do we have group power? Give me a yes or no in the chat if you think that we have group power. Okay, I see a lot of no's, Institutional power. Yes or no? Do Black people have a long list of institutions that are ready to fight and support and defend our interests and protect our communities, protect our resources, help us get what we need, solve problems? Institutions. What do you think? Institutional power. Okay. All right. So that's a no. All right. So check. Wealth power. Do Black people have wealth power? Do you see us as a unified force using our wealth to kind of shove people around and push the ball up the field and bust people upside the head and accomplish our goals? Okay, I see a lot of no's. All right. Numerical population power. Numerical population power. Are we kind of like maybe people coming from south of the border where their numbers are big and growing and just new people every year, and our percentage of the population is growing, where we're just going to have so many of us that we can just kind of impose our will? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of no's. Okay, well, we're kind of losing here. We're running out of power sources here. Political power. Do Black people have a long list of politicians that are out on Capitol Hill and the mayor's office and the governor's mansion fighting on our behalf, just representing us, getting our reparations and pushing the Congressional Black Caucus and to do the right thing on behalf of Black folks? Do we have any political power? I mean, come on now. Do we? And which links to the last form of power, voting power. So every time we vote, now Black people vote more than anybody. We do souls to the poll. We had 2 campaigns. I remember one was souls to the polls, and the other one was booties to the polls. Anybody remember? Get your booty to the poll. Get your booty to the poll. Right. So we went and got the church folks, and all of them showed up to vote. And we got the guys in the strip club. So we went from A to Z with voting. So do we when we vote, do our votes have power? When we vote for politicians, do they take care of our interests? Do we get what we want, or do we kind of feel a little bit duped? What do you think? Okay, so I see some yeses actually in the voting power category. Okay, I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and that's going to be a no for me, because last time I checked, there were a lot of people that supported Joe Biden who are a little bit upset because they're feeling like they got ignored by the Biden White House. And I can tell you that stuff is real. I was very shocked and almost traumatized when Russell Simmons and I were trying to get the Obama administration to change their policy on mass incarceration. I was stunned by how difficult that was, because I did not think that was a hard thing. That would be a hard thing to do. But we literally had to, the thing that threw it over the top was Justin Bieber. When I wrote a letter to the president, and Justin Bieber tweeted the hashtag linked to the letter, and people read the letter to Obama, and all these celebrities have signed it. And that's what led Obama's team to finally fold. But before that, believe me, they did every dirty trick in the book to get us to back off this issue, and we wouldn't, because mass incarceration is obviously a serious problem. And I was really surprised by how hard it was. It kind of made me sad. So basically, we've gone down the entire list of different types of power listed here by Dr. Anderson on page 29 of Black Labor, White Wealth, and it looks like we don't have any of those forms of power. And so ultimately, what it says to me is that perhaps we need to really have a conversation with ourselves and with each other over what power really means. What does Black power really look like? What's it supposed to? How does it manifest itself? And I would encourage you. Here's where I began to think about power and achieve power in my own life. I started thinking, okay, instead of trying to get power for 40 million black people, I got to start by getting power in my own life. As a black man, I felt powerless, and I was like, gosh, I don't feel like I get to decide where I'm going to be or how much money I'm going to make, how free I'm going to be. So I figured out that understanding money and how to make money was a great way to get some power in my own life. I realized that if I don't have to show up to work every day for a white man who hates my guts, that I would have a lot of freedom to make choices in my own life. So I would at least have power over my own domain. Right? If I don't even have to leave the house, then I don't have to deal with you. Right? And so that was a step. And then also finding teammates, really good teammates in my life that can help me achieve certain goals, like starting with my wife, right? Picking the right kind of woman who could be a teammate with me, where she's a great woman, smart lady, brings good ideas to the table, brought resources to the table. She had money even before she met me, and then we have that. So we have that. So that's another type of power, good teammates. So start with my wife. How do we raise our kids? Your kids become your teammates as you get older. Working with other black people in the community who are like-minded people. You're my teammates. We're all teammates right now together, right? And I think that gives us power as well, right? So ultimately, power requires you to think about all the different kinds of power and really doing an inventory on what's really there and what's not, and making sure you separate true power from symbolism or from the perception of power or this belief that you have power. No, actually having real power is what really matters. So I'm going to read more. He says the dominant society uses power mechanisms such as government, private corporations, religious and social institutions to perpetuate its self-interest and secure and maintain control of power building resources. So what he basically says is that those who seek to control you, they develop these entities, largely government, corporations, religious and social institutions, to pursue their self-interest, right? So when you're talking about developing powerful children, I think that helping them understand how to build corporations, that's a type of power, because that's an institution that will yield power for them. Maybe it's a foundation they develop. Maybe it's some sort of organization, which really all that really is helping them to become gang affiliated, basically, like helping them find that's all a corporation is. A corporation is basically a big gang. They just don't kill people, right? But it's a gang is basically a group of people who all agree that they're going to abide by the same code of conduct and believe in the same ideas and pursue a similar agenda as a collective, right? So effectively, that method of thinking is something that you can instill into your kids, as opposed to what we tend to do, which is to send our kids one by one to go get affiliated with somebody else's gang, right? Like, okay, get this job working at GE or at Ford, and then you'll be part of Gang Ford, and Gang Ford will protect you. But unfortunately, Gang Ford doesn't always have the same interests as you. They don't care a lot about the black community. They're not going to care so much about the things you care about. So when you try to change the direction of the gang or of the group, then you're going to be booted out of the group because you're not going to be a good fit. Okay, so moving on. Black labor was a wealth builder and therefore a power generating resource that dominant society greatly valued and manipulated. To maintain the power generated by black labor, white society used whatever means necessary to keep blacks powerless and under control. So they did a couple things. They built their own power through institutions, simultaneously did everything they could to keep you as powerless as possible so that they can maintain control over you. This is a global phenomenon. Back during apartheid in South Africa, they didn't even let black men learn how to shoot guns. Just like they didn't want slaves to have guns. If you lived in South Africa during apartheid and you were of military age and you were a man and you left town, then your family might get arrested because they would need them to tell them, the authorities, where is your son? Is your son somewhere getting military training? If so, we're going to lock up the whole family. Okay, so the goal of keeping you powerless comes down to making sure you don't have the resources to make yourself powerful, make sure you don't have the skills to make yourself powerful, making sure you don't have the unity to make yourself powerful. So it's no coincidence, in my view, that 100,000 black children every year graduate from high school in white-run schools and can't even read, can't do math, can't write, can't compete, right? It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that you have music that encourages your most able-bodied, most intelligent young men to go out and become drug addicts, right? That's not a coincidence to me. I don't think that's all happened by accident. It's not a coincidence that your black college graduates, your smartest, your best, and your brightest, are being sent to college to learn how to go work for white people. Like that's not that even HBCUs do that. That's what they were designed for. That's why many of them were named after white people. Spelman, Morehouse, not Morehouse, sorry, not Morehouse I'm not sure about, but Howard, schools like that, they were named after white people. Well, why would an HBCU be named after a white person? Well, it's because it was developed by white people in the image of white people. They just put black faces on it so you think that it's yours. There's a lot of stuff that has a black face on it that you think belongs to you, but it doesn't belong to you. But you're supposed to identify with it, right? Like for example, the TV show A Different World. Um, we see that as a black show, right? And I know people that were on that show. Right? I have one of my really good friends played a role. He played Daryl, Dwayne Wayne's best friend. I brought him on the podcast before, and I was very surprised to hear that the reason The Different World isn't back and there's no reboot is because Warner Brothers owns A Different World, and if they decide they're not going to do anything with it, then they're not going to do anything with it. I just read an article the other day about the movie Friday, Ice Cube's movie. Apparently, I didn't know this, and I text Cube about it. We did talk about it a little bit, but nothing private was shared, so it's okay to talk about it. But I didn't know Warner Brothers really decides if Friday is going to be released or not. And so ultimately, what I think you have to kind of understand is what it means to actually have control and power over something as opposed to the appearance of that, right? And also the other thing that's important to understand is that when you're talking about wealth and economics, it's really critically important to realize that there's nothing wrong with partnerships. There's nothing wrong with working with people from other groups. In fact, that's what you're supposed to do if you're part of the global economy. The reason that integration didn't work for us is because it was just a bad deal, right? You were brought in to do all the heavy lifting. You were brought in to give a lot of black labor, and which was going to lead to white wealth. But it would have been okay if it were black labor, black wealth. Or perhaps even better would be white labor, black wealth. How about that? How about that be the sequel to the sequel, right? So y'all come working for us. And I've seen that. I know black people who have white people that work for them, and they benefit. And there's nothing wrong with that relationship at all. All right. So group power, he talks about that on page 30. He says the United States constitutional spirit of individualism notwithstanding, group power was the true and base origin of all rights in American society. Group power is typically manifested when a collection of individuals organize and pool their resources to achieve common goals and shared benefits. Such action is the primary instrument for securing objects of interest and power. In the founding years of this nation, European whites built their dreams of becoming a wealthy aristocracy within a capitalist democracy on the backs of black slaves. The collective power resources of many people, nations, religions, and organizations were aligned and concertedly used to exploit blacks. Their strategy illustrates that group power requires general agreement among the participating members on a core issue, but power evolves from the group's collective motives and goals. So I want to stop and pause for a minute with that point. I want us to meditate on this for a moment. Two things. One, that's why we made the latest film we actually produced. Is called Till Death Do Us Part. And basically, it's about, how to get married and how to stay that way and how to build a family, right? And we only talk to couples that have been together for 30 years or longer because I wanted people to really understand how to build a strong family, how to build a structured legacy. And so the film is free, right? We're going to show it tomorrow night, Thursday night, July 22nd at 8 p.m. You can go to blackmovienight.net if you want to go. Somebody type that in the chat so others can see it. It's blackmovienight.net. So feel free to go to blackmovienight.net and register, and you can see it for free. Why do I bring that up? Well, I bring that up because when Dr. Anderson talks about group power, pay attention now. What is he saying? He says such action is the primary instrument for securing objects of interest and power. He says that group power is typically manifested when a collection of individuals organize and pool their resources to achieve common goals and share benefits. Well, one example, what's a good example of a collection of individuals that organize and pool their resources to achieve common goals and share benefits? Well, that's a family. That's what a family is supposed to do. And so ultimately, when you don't have family, you have killed your ability to have group power. You literally are trying to compete with groups by yourself. It's like running the Olympics, and I'm doing the 4x100 meter relay, but I have no teammates. You can't win. Usain Bolt could not win the 4x100 meter relay by himself. There's no man in the history of this planet that's fast enough to win the 4x100 meter relay by himself. There's no man that could win the Super Bowl by himself. right? There's no man who can win the NBA Finals by himself, even Michael Jordan. So effectively, when you talk about the destruction of the family, this is why I want you to really understand this, why this is so critically important. That's probably the number one reason that Black people don't have power. That's where your power went. Your power disappeared because your family's disappeared. And now you got a single mama scrambling, trying to just barely hold it together. She's not doing powernomics. She's doing strugglenomics. Her whole testimony, in many cases, not all cases, but much of her testimony is, I made it through the storm. Look at me. Look, thank you, Jesus. I made it. Right. And by the way, Akila, it's not blackmovienight.net, blackmovienightnet.com. It's actually blackmovienight.net, blackmovienight.net. I'll put it on the screen so you guys can see it. But yeah, so think about this. Think about how many times you hear people tell stories about being Black, and the stories are all about surviving the struggle, right? Like barely keeping, like Good Times. Remember Good Times? Keeping your head above water, making a wave when you can, temporary layoffs, good times, easy credit rip-offs, good times, right? and that was seen as realistic for Black people, right? People would see the Cosby Show where they dance and they smile and they happy because the mama's a lawyer and the daddy's a doctor and all that stuff, and they think that's unrealistic, right? That was the big critique of the Cosby Show, was that it's not realistic for Black people to actually be happy and be unified and to prosper. What is more realistic is for Black people to barely be struggling just an inch above death, right? To literally barely be able to keep your apartment, not your house, your apartment, right? To barely be able to hold the family together. Now, Good Times, to their credit, they did have the daddy, but you saw they took the daddy out. They were like, oh, this will make it really realistic if the daddy's gone, right? And then you have strugglenomics, right? So, but when you see Cosby, you see a little bit of powernomics, right? They're thinking about real estate transactions. They're actually putting money in their retirement accounts. They're actually building family wealth. That's sending Theo to college or whatever, right? And this is a reality for some of your families, right? This is not a fantasy or a fairy tale, but it comes off as a fantasy or fairy tale when you've been brainwashed to believe that being Black means nothing more than chaos, dysfunction, trauma, and struggle. A lot of you have endured the kinds of trauma that no human being should ever have to go through. So I mean, it's appalling to me. And I'm very sorry for that. I'm very sorry. I apologize to you for whatever you've gone through to this point, because you didn't deserve that. If you went through any form of trauma before the age of 10, raise your hand. Raise your hand if you went through something before the age of 10 that a child shouldn't go through. How many? Maybe it's something sexual. Maybe it's something in terms of violence. Maybe it was something in terms of losing a parent. Maybe it's something in terms of just getting evicted. Maybe it's something in terms of just having to figure out and solve problems that you shouldn't be solving as a 7-year-old. I want to highlight that, and I want to just first of all apologize to you and to say I'm so sorry you had to go through that, and to let you know that if I have a dream or a vision, it's my dream is that our kids don't have to go through that. And it's not as if it's a fantasy to believe that we can have a world where Black children are not having to sort of see trauma as the cost of admission for being Black. There's nothing about being Black that says that you must automatically endure unspeakable trauma. That's just what you're used to. That's how we compare trauma stories. You ever hear people really say, well, you ain't really been through nothing. I didn't have no food to eat, and I got shot when I was 4, and my daddy left me when I was 5, and my mama was a hoe and got hooked on crack, and I mean, just whatever, right? You hear people do that. You hear people talk about, like I used to have to sleep in the crack house because my parents would crack, I mean, just terrible things. And I'm not making fun of any of that, but it's kind of like, it's sad because it's like the world, it has been flipped on its head to the point where we just really think that is what it means to be Black. And then what happens in many cases is I've seen cases where you get rewarded for that. The more traumatic your testimony is, the more people just seem to love it, and I remember when I was writing my essays to get into college, and I remember somebody saying, well, they like the whole rags to riches stories. They like the trauma stories of Black people. They like hearing those stories about how hard it was growing up in the hood. So I remember as an 18-year-old trying to make my, write down, think about all the terrible things that have happened to me just to prove to them that I'm really Black. And it ain't supposed to be like that. It's not supposed to be like that. What's supposed to really happen is you're supposed to have a mother and a father who both at least agree on one basic idea that protecting the children is the number one priority. If you do that one basic thing, you're literally getting rid of about 40 or 50% of the dysfunction in a lot of families, is by having a mother and a father who both agree that we're going to put our own issues to the side and make sure these babies are sheltered and protected and provided for by any means necessary, right? And then at that point, you can go to higher levels, right? You can go to that level saying, hey, what about this radical idea? What about this idea that perhaps you and I can maybe read books and watch videos and go to therapy together so we can overcome our trauma and actually become a family unit and have each other's back and learn how to love each other and trust each other and protect each other, right? Whoa, isn't that crazy, right? And then at that point, you can go to the next level. The next level might be to say, okay, how do we make sure that we give our kids what they need so that they're prepared for the world by giving them a proper education, without depending on white people to do that, making sure that they're economically prepared for maybe little things like we have that $5 a day investing plan, just something like that literally will change everything for your kid. I swear to God it would. And doing things that'll make sure your child is in a position of power where they're no longer playing strugglenomics, right? They're no longer trying to avoid hitting rock bottom. They're actually going into the world where they have the ability to actually go out and impose their will on the world. They can go out and be a world changer, right? And this is a process, and it's something that I think can be done by anybody if you're intentional and deliberate about it, right? If we were as determined to build healthy families and healthy children as we are to build great basketball players, football players, rappers, and strippers, then I believe that we can accomplish this overnight. I really do. I just think it has to be a deliberate process. It can't be one of these things where you just sort of, stumble your way through the whole situation. Like, okay, I met a girl, she had a nice booty, we had sex, she had a baby, she got on my nerves, I broke up with her, I saw the kid 6 months ago, and now I'm off to the next one so I can go have a bunch of kids everywhere. She's got a bunch of baby daddies. The kids are confused, don't know who the hell the daddy is. And the next thing you know, the kids are into all kinds of crazy situations that wouldn't have happened if the parents had simply said, let's really think about this thing. Let's be conscious. The word conscious is used a lot. People talk about consciousness a lot. Consciousness is just awareness. That's all it is. It's stopping and saying, what am I doing? And why am I doing this? Right? So I'm encouraging you to be very conscious. Consciousness builds power. When you're conscious about developing your power, you build your. I'm not stupid. I'm conscious enough and aware enough to know that I'm a powerful man. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm just Joe Blow on the street. Okay. And don't you think for 1 second that the consciousness or the power that I have was not built by accident. I didn't get lucky one day. I didn't stumble upon it. I thought about it and obsessed about it and was very careful and strategic and disciplined about it. And I developed it and built it because I wasn't trying to be the white man's slave. I did not want that. And I'm not trying to be the black man's slave either, because we got a lot of crazy black people out here too. So be conscious about it. And then remember that family is your first line of defense. That's where this group power comes from, right? And it also can extend into things like investment clubs. Just having a group of other black. Do you know how wonderful it is? Do you know when I started feeling safe as a black entrepreneur? Because remember, I've always been radical. I've always been a big mouth. I was on the Ghetto Boys podcast, and Willie D said something like, he said, man, he said, with you stepping on all those toes, I'm surprised you lived this long. So I was like, oh, that's a good point. But in all seriousness, though, when you talk about developing that group power, it's I remember that I used to have a lot of concerns that I said, gosh, I feel like I'm saying the right things, but I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to have problems. I won't be able to get a job at these white universities because they don't like black men like me. And I didn't know what to do. And I was doing my best, kind of like, okay, I can build a business and make my own money, and I know I can do it. And the time I started feeling really safe and confident and comfortable and knew I was never going to have to go back to the plantation was this. It was when I started making friends with like-minded black people, particularly black men as well, who were in the same boat as me. And when we got together and our families would get together, and I'm thinking about guys like I told you about my friend Chris Davis and our kids get together and play, and Lamar Tyler and a few other black men that I know, it was like, okay, it's going to be all right because now we have group power. Now you can't really hurt one of us without all of us taking notice and coming together to help each other out, right? So that group power is extremely important. I encourage you to look for that. It is out there. There are like-minded people out there, and I encourage you to find them because that'll help you have a lot more security and safety in a crazy world. So let me keep reading here. I'm on page 30 of Black Labor, White Wealth. And those of you that are listening online, I am about to shut off this feed in a second. If you want to join the book club, you can actually go to blackkeystogreatness.com, and it's totally free. This blackkeystogreatness.com. So I'm reading from Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claud Anderson. And give me 1 second here. And we're on page 30. All right. So the next thing that he says is that institutions arise and exist only by means of group behavior. Institutions center their activities around fundamental social, cultural, academic, racial, religious, or financial needs. They permanently unite a group of people in a cooperative task. Once decisions have been made by the larger society, institutions use their resources to confirm and explain why the larger society made such decisions, and occasionally institutions are called upon to play leadership roles. Institutions can acquire a variety of powers due to their non-biological permanency. So pay attention to that. I want to focus on this term, non-biological permanency. That pretty much means you can't die. Now, what does that mean? Or unless somebody decides to consciously end the organization. You won't die because, you had a heart attack. You won't die, because you just stopped breathing. Institutions can live longer than individuals. Well, that's important to understand because one of the problems with Black leadership, and I think it's because Black people are always in this conscious, consistent need to be validated somehow, is that a lot of our movements tend to be run by, maybe one ego-driven Negro who thinks that he's the center of everything, right? And I'm not making fun of anybody, and I didn't mean to say it that way, but one of the things about that is that makes you incredibly vulnerable is that if I want to end a Black movement, then what I do is I look for the epicenter. I look for the person that is the head of that movement, the one guy or one woman that if I kill that person, again, if I'm the CIA or the FBI, all I got to do is kill that person. Make them, because how the CIA is. They can make you have a heart attack and all kinds of stuff, right? Or I discredit that person, right? I cut the head off the snakes, as Terrence says, right? I connect this guy with some stripper or something, and I say, hey, look at him, look at what he did in the bedroom, right? When we know, you got a bunch of freaks out here, but for some reason, right, you disrupt that purity that's supposed to be there, and next thing you know, people stop believing in the movement. And I'll say this too, and I want to make it very clear that I know again, because I'm trying to be conscious and aware of what's happening. I know that to some extent, I have a movement that I'm attached to, and I'm a figurehead in that area. And you also see, you can go out. There's no shortage of places where you'll find a really deliberate effort to discredit me. Right? Boyce is this. Boyce is a liar. He's this. He's a fraud. He's blah blah. Right? And it's fine. I mean, it is what it is, right? It comes with the territory, right? None of these people have met me because I don't talk to any of them. But for some reason, they make these things up, I guess, because they see you in a certain light. But one of the things I want to make real clear for you is that this movement, as well as any other, it needs to be bigger than the individual, right? My job is not to convince you that Boyce Watkins is the greatest guy in history. Who cares about Boyce? Boyce is not important. What is important is you, and what's important are the ideas that we talk about. I'm not the first person to talk about Black wealth. Well, I'm not the first person to talk about Black power. I'm not the first person to really discuss these ideas. Dr. Anderson and many others have talked about these things. And what really makes the movement more permanent is to institutionalize the movement. So, for example, the Black Business School, that's one institution I'm affiliated with. I put the Black Business School in my will, and a big chunk of my estate, about 70% of my estate, is going to go toward the continuous functioning and the legacy of the Black Business School. And so what I encourage you to do is to take whatever you have, whatever you think you are, whatever you're doing for your family, find some way to instill that spirit and that energy into something that won't die after you're gone. Or like if you're LeBron James and you're a basketball player, what did LeBron do? LeBron made a bunch of money playing basketball, but he was transferring those resources into assets that cannot die, assets that won't get old, assets that won't stop making money just because he has a bad knee that year, right? So effectively, when you talk about institutional power, that non-biological permanency is what makes an institution far greater and stronger than an individual. So he says also here that if financially supported, they survive aging, political shifts, and drastic social changes. So there's a big if there, if financially supported. So one consequence of a victim mentality that many Black people are given, or one consequence that occurs is because we see ourselves as powerless, we don't necessarily engage in what I call economic maturity. Economic maturity means that if you want to have power, group power, or institutional power, you have to support the institutions you believe in. So when I started bringing Dr. Claud Anderson in here, and I was like, thank you, I was so thankful for the great work that he did. I said, I really challenged everybody watching. I said, if you believe in what he's doing, then go support that. Go make a donation, go buy a product, do something, because you can't just sit there and sort of watch the world happen. Powerful people don't sit and watch the world happen. Powerful people are not just products of their environment. Powerful people and powerful groups, rather than being products of their environment, they are manifestors of their environment. Their environment is a product of them, right? So part of becoming an empowered person or powerful in your own life, in your own circle, in your own space, is to understand your own ability to manifest and to create the things that are around you. Like in my household, if my household is in disarray, it's not just a matter of me saying, oh well, I can't do anything about it. No, I'm the head of the household, and this household is a reflection of me, right? And so the same thing is true with supporting your institutions. If you have institutions and you support those institutions can fulfill whatever need your community has. If you do not support your own institutions, then guess what? You'll be put at the bottom of everybody else's priority list, and nothing will get done. And that's exactly what you have in many cases right now. So reading on, he says, an institution's powers are in proportion to and may be measured by its ability to create, store, and circulate data, develop and influence public policies, aggregate people around issues, network with other institutions and organizations, and stimulate the development of leadership. So I want you guys, when you get a chance, go back to page 30 and read that very carefully in terms of what an institution is supposed to do. Create, store, and circulate data. Well, when white folks do that to you, that's pretty much that propaganda, like when they're telling you to go get a government shot instead of actually taking care of your health and doing preventative things for your health, or when they're telling you, when they're pushing the blaxploitation movies out of Hollywood or whatever, or when they're pushing, whatever the agenda is, whatever you think the agenda happens to be. That's all that create, store, and circulate data, develop and influence public policies, right? Getting laws changed, right? Getting you riled up over whatever law that they want to see changed. Aggregate people around issues, network with other institutions and organizations, and stimulate the development of leadership. When I was in Paris, I remember I was walking down the street near the Eiffel Tower, and I saw this building that was as big as an entire city block. It was a gigantic building. And I said, what is that building for? And the tour guide said that building has been in France for 500 years, and it has produced thousands of military commanders that are all dedicated to the protection of France, and including Napoleon. Napoleon graduated from that school. And basically what I thought about was, I said, this is very interesting because you had people who had a belief. The belief was that we want to develop France, take pride in France, we want to protect France, etc. And so we're going to create this institution that is going to manufacture soldiers that are dedicated to protecting the country of France, right? So the question that you must ask yourself is this: what institutions do you have in the Black community where you're mass producing thousands of young people every year that are dedicated to the upliftment and the protection of the Black community in America? Does such an institution exist? Does it? Can you think of any? No. I mean, is there an institution anywhere that is producing thousands of Black people every year that are going to the Black communities and purchasing real estate? Is there an institution that's producing thousands of Black people every year that's developing thousands of young people that are going to become the entrepreneurs of the next generation? Yes or no? What do you think? No. What do you do have though? Here's what you do have. Here's what you do have in terms of mass production. You have thousands of little league football programs all across the United States that are mass producing thousands of young black boys that are dedicated to playing football. That's why you get the great NFL players that you see. That's where you get the Russell Wilsons or whoever your favorite player is, right? These guys come out of these Pop Warner football leagues because they have a system, right? They have an entire system and which supports institutions that mass produce little kids who love the hell out of football and want to be NFL stars. And most of them don't make it, but a few of them do, and that's where you get the great players from, right? So I encourage you to kind of process that a little bit. Because what we're going to have to learn how to do is mass produce the things that we want to see. And some of you mentioned the Black Business School, and if you want to know why I created the Black Business School, that was why. I figured that if I'm on here every single day, which I have been pretty much every day for the last decade, I said maybe I can help mass produce through the power of the internet and technology and social media, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of young people who are going to be the leaders of the next generation. In fact, I want to remind you of the model that I laid out for you guys on how to make your kids into future leaders of industry. Building sturdy children. The word sturdy is spelled with an E instead of a U. And the S stands for, these are skills that your children should have in order to become leaders in industry, to become the next Elon Musk, the next Jeff Bezos, or whatever. We know we're going to produce thousands of black people that are prepared to go work for white people. We've got those systems in place. That's called the American University System, including HBCUs. We know we're going to have thousands of black people that are going to be working for white people, which is fine. No judgment there. We're going to have thousands of black people that will be playing sports, rapping, twerking, thugging out, whatever these systems mass produce, that's going to be there. But the thing with the sturdy model is these are the skills that you can give your child that will prepare them to become a captain of industry. And so the skills are the S stands for systems. Kids that learn how to make money through systems can make a whole lot more money than people who make money through labor. Most multimillionaires make their money through a system, not through labor. T is technology. Technology is how you scale. That's why the vast majority or a big chunk of the wealth created all throughout the world last year was created in Silicon Valley because they're the masters of technology. That's how they were able to take over, the movie industry and music and everything else. It's because they understand the technology. E is entrepreneurship. If you have entrepreneurship skills, you can identify wealth even when it doesn't show up in the form of money. You can identify opportunities. You're not looking for someone to give you opportunities. You actually see opportunities as something you can create for yourself and create for other people. Entrepreneurs can think that way. And also entrepreneurs have no ceiling on how much money they can make. Their income is not determined by a boss. It's determined by their skill, commitment, and vision. The R stands for relationships. If you teach your children, if you put them in spaces where they learn how to have good relationships, conflict resolution skills, the ability to have a good front-facing type of energy that will make other people want to work with them and collaborate with them, where they can add value to the lives of others, then your child will have relationships with other individuals that will allow them to become even stronger and more powerful. Most powerful people are people that are connected, right? When they talk about somebody being mob affiliated and connected and protected and all that, well, that's basically saying that person knows how to maintain healthy relationships where when something goes wrong or they need help, they've got enough people that owe them favors that the whole world swoops in to make sure that they're going to be okay. The D, as opposed to the opposite, which is, getting constantly triggered and constantly alienating the entire world because somebody told you can do it all by yourself because you never got the therapy to kind of work through whatever trust issue you develop from the trauma that you experienced as a child. That we see on a regular basis. That's all over the place. The last skill you want to train your child on is delegation. Delegation is an important leadership skill that involves trust, training, that allows you to think of a business and making money as a team sport where they can spend time working with other people and delegating tasks so that they're working with 8 hands instead of 1 or 10 hands or 20 hands or thousands of hands or whatever, right? So kids that are trained in those areas, systems, technology, entrepreneurship, relationship management, and delegation, they tend to be sturdy children in the sense that these are the kids that are going to be the multi-millionaires. I mean, making $1 million a month and all this other crazy stuff. Okay. So anyway, let's move on. All right. So, and speaking of relationships, don't forget that tomorrow night we're actually going to watch that movie "Till Death Do Us Part," which starts with the most important relationship, which is the one with your family. And it's a really great film. Tierra KJ Williams made the film, and we're going to show it to you for free. We really want people to see this film badly enough that we're not charging any money for you to see it. So if you come live, it's totally free. You can go to blackmovienight.net to register. That's blackmovienight.net, not .com.net. Okay. So let me read a couple more paragraphs. And then I'm going to go and lay down with my wife because doing all this, getting all pumped up about this stuff actually makes my head hurt a little bit. So y'all know me. I get riled up. I'm not pretending to be riled up. This is really how I feel. All right. So on page 31, Dr. Anderson is talking about the impact of institutionalized power on blacks. And he says that the superior group power of whites influenced all the institutions they built: government, schools, businesses, churches, and social organizations. Institutions were the means of inculcating values that would perpetually maintain the self-interest of European whites and their descendants. Thus, institutional power has become a major factor in maintaining the power imbalance between blacks and whites. Government was one of the most powerful tools of the dominant society. Without the support and power of government, the white society could not have enslaved and segregated blacks for centuries. So you're right, government's a problem, right? So government, talk about that separately. But what I really like is that word values. Um, when I started thinking more in terms of institution building, I started realizing, wait, my family's an institution. And then I realized, wait a minute, I run this institution, which means that I get to shape the values of this institution. So when I talk to my kids, I'm constantly giving them their value system. Like I tell my daughter all the time, every day, she has it memorized. And I say, I said, what are the keys to success? The 3P model of success. She'll say preparation, preparation, practice, and perseverance, right? Those are the three things. And I say, and every time I'll say, what's the key to success? She'll say preparation, practice, perseverance, right? And this is what we talked about that today. We're watching Naomi Osaka and how she became the best tennis player in the world. And I was like, see, she's doing the 3Ps: preparation, practice, and perseverance. That's how you become the best, right? So what you're doing when you have those conversations is you are literally drilling the subconscious mind of your child to make sure that they have the values that are going to lead them to have power and freedom and success, right? So institutions tend to come with some sort of value system. The school system has its values. Media has its values. We know Hollywood has all kinds of crazy value systems. Government, Democrats have a certain set of values. Republicans have a certain set of values. So my question for Black people is, what are your values? What are your values? And what are your institutions? And don't tell me that your values are the same values as the white guy that you work for, because those aren't your values. Those are his values. That's not really who you are. That's who he wants you to be. Don't tell me your institutions are whatever company you work for, or whatever group you're affiliated with, or whatever university you attended. Where are your values that are linked to solving this problem that we have as Black people that relates to the wealth gap and us achieving power, security, and economic freedom for our kids, right? So your values have to come from you. You got to really sit down and think, what are my values, right? So if you want to know my values, what are my values? Well, my values start with what I call the Black core of three, which is Black people should educate our own children, create our own jobs, and support Black businesses. But you can really call it the Black core of four, because there's a fourth part about maintaining, rebuilding, and strengthening our families. I believe that if we do those four things, we will win. We will succeed. There's nobody that can stop us. Racism is not really a big factor at that point. So let's keep going. Government, for example, enacted laws that forbade schools to accept Black children and made it illegal to teach a Black person to read or write. Initially, all formal religious denominations accepted the abuse of Blacks and even offered biblical justifications for it. Through government, businesses, churches, and other institutionalized power holders, white society controlled the wealth and power and resources. They also controlled Blacks, their primary source of labor. So pay attention to this, right? So basically what he says is, okay, so government did not allow the schools to accept Black children or teach them how to read and write. So that's one institution, the schools. Two, religious denominations accepted the abuse of Blacks. So that's the second institution, religion. Three, through government, businesses, churches, and other institutionalized power holders, white society controlled the wealth and labor, wealth, power, and resources. White society controlled the wealth, power, and resources. Okay, so he talks about two major institutions, the school systems and religious groups, right? And he can also talk about the corporations and things like that. And so one of the things that I have really kind of laid out there to you guys in terms of understanding how to overcome the racism, white supremacy boogeyman that's out there, because it's all very real. We know that it's out there and it's very real, is to say that sometimes you're thinking about it all wrong. When you're living within an institution and you've committed yourself to an institution that has values that you don't identify with, and you're trying to find power and impose your will within that institution, in many cases you're not going to succeed. Because you're trying to find a place of comfort within the cage, right? The cage is making you uncomfortable, and you're trying to get comfortable in the cage when really the answer is to get out of the cage, right? And so when you talk about this institution like the school system, who in the hell says that Black people can't have our own schools, can't educate our own kids? Why in the hell are we so determined to believe that the best way for us to be educated is to hand our kids to a white guy so he can educate them for us? What are we stupid? Is something wrong with us? Look at how many smart Black people there are. Why? And you have YouTube, you have all these resources available to you. There's a million ways you can educate your child 100 times better than anything they can do in the school system. I'm not telling you to homeschool your child. I'm just saying that the educational process is something that I think is a little more subtle than just sitting there in front of a chalkboard, just talking to your kid and going through things with them and expressing and sharing ideas that your child can embrace. That's the type of education, right? So this false idea that we need white people to educate us, I just think that needs to be thrown out the window. I truly don't care about what they're teaching in the school system, because I don't believe that the answer is over there anyway. I believe the answer lies in the institution you control, which is your house. Give me a yes or no if you get what I'm saying. Okay. The next piece, religious denominations. Well, we know about religion, right? We know what happens when religion goes bad, in terms of how religion was used to control us. And so I don't need to talk about that. So I'm gonna let you make a personal decision on that. I know my wife and I, we don't go to church, and she's Catholic and I'm Baptist, and we just kind of laugh about, when we see stuff that seems stupid, we just laugh about it, but we respect it, right? There's a respect there. You should have that respect, and I will never disrespect the Black church. But I think at the end of the day, what I have learned is that if you want to understand this game, you got to figure out your own solutions, and you have to. It's not something that comes as part of some sort of pre-designed package, right? Your oppressor is not going to hand you the blueprint for Black liberation. You're going to have to write that blueprint yourself based on what it means to you and what deficits you're trying to overcome. So let me read more. Black Labor, White Wealth, page 31. It says, wealth power. Economic power has always been the greatest source of power for individuals and groups in America. Individuals who merge their political or financial resources into a group can become very powerful in a capitalist democracy. For instance, Jews and white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, WASP, have uncontested control over a disproportionate share of America's wealth. Wealth gives them options. They use their wealth as political tools to open doors to new economic opportunities for their respective groups, to punish other groups, and to block doors of opportunity. So they do a triple whammy on you, right? They will open doors in one area, give themselves opportunities. They will punish other groups, and they also block doors. They block you out, right? Obviously, all whites do not possess great wealth and power, but because of their strong sense of racial cohesion and their compulsive belief in keeping economic resources within their communities, the resources of wealthy and powerful whites stay within the white community. They rarely help non-whites, especially blacks. Chancellor Williams, in his book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, wrote, quote, Caucasians will wage frightful wars against other Caucasians, but will quickly unite as though by instinct against non-whites, not only in wars, but in international policies. They have developed a kind of built-in solidarity in their relations with non-Caucasian peoples. This fact, as much as anything else, helps to explain their position as masters of the world. Okay, so that takes us back to the basic idea that Black people have no friends. I don't believe in allies and all that good stuff. You have to figure out who's your group. You got to find a group. If you don't find a group, then you might be in trouble. Let's read more. Together, wealth and politics represent a potent combination of powers because they are versatile, and by working together, they can produce other forms of power. They are the root cause of racial stratification, exploitation, and the unequal distribution of resources. In the present social structure, maldistribution guarantees that America will never be an, quote, equal opportunity society. So get that out of your head. Please let that go. It's, equality. We're fighting for equality. That don't even make no sense. It's not going to happen in America. Those who hold a disproportionate share of the wealth and power are not inclined to share or relinquish these tools. In combination, political power and wealth become practically synonymous in a capitalist democracy. So what he's saying is that the people have the money, have the power. We've talked about this before, and I believe the money drives the power. The money is the horse, the cart is the politics. Sorry, the money drives the politics. The politics does not drive the money. The money drives the politics, which then drives the money. Right? So the people that have the money get the political power, and they use the political power to get more money, which gives them more political power, and you see how the cycle continues. So since wealth remains concentrated and rigidly locked in the hands of whites, black progress will be difficult. As far back as 1790, the richest 10% of white households has held half of the nation's wealth. By the eve of the Civil War, 1% of the most wealthy whites owned 24% of the nation's wealth. 100 years later, in 1969, they owned 24.9%. So what he's saying is that in that 100 years after the Civil War, the amount of wealth held by the richest whites did not change. It literally did not change at all, actually increased. During the very same time periods, black wealth remained 1 and 2%. So after the Civil War, black people had 1% of the wealth. 100 years after the Civil War, black people had 2% of the wealth. So what's been going on is that the wealth is not changing hands. So what this says to me, two things it says to me is, one, if you talk about politics, if you ain't talking about the money, then you ain't saying nothing. If you ain't talking about the redistribution of wealth into the hands of black people, into black business owners, you're not saying anything. Van Jones, I think today got or recently got $100 million from Jeff Bezos to do whatever he wanted. I applaud Van getting the money. I was really happy for him. And I just messaged and I said, I hope you will help build some businesses in the black community so that the next 100 million comes from us and not from a guy like Jeff Bezos. Because here's the deal. You've got Jeff Bezos is right there in your community. Some of y'all are rocking a baby right now to sleep. And that baby is designated by God to be the next Jeff Bezos. That baby, that little 7-year-old playing in the swing set in the front yard is supposed to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or the next Oprah Winfrey. They're supposed to be in that multi-billionaire category. They're supposed to be like Elon Musk and taking people to space and creating thousands of jobs for their people. And so what you have to do, in my view, is make sure that you give your child that one opening that I believe provides the greatest opportunity for black people to solve the wealth crisis in terms of the gaps and all this other stuff. The greatest opportunity that you have in this area. Now I'm speaking again, because finance is my area. That's my thing. That's what I talk to college students. The thing about wealth and money is there's this old saying. How many of you have heard this saying that a fool and his money will soon part ways? Give me a yes or no if you've ever heard that. Right? A fool and his money will soon part ways. All right. Well, there's a corollary to that statement. There's an opposite to that. There's a follow-up to that statement, which says that a smart man will always be able to find his way to the money, right? The person who sits down at the negotiating table, who understands economics better than the person they're negotiating with, will always figure out where the money resides. They will always figure out how to get their cut. They will always know how to make the deal work out for them. Most economic transactions, and they occur every day. You've been making them your whole entire life. Most economic transactions require a type of awareness that allows each party to know, hey, am I getting a good deal? Am I making a good trade or a bad trade? Right? And that awareness is what helps you avoid what Dr. Anderson talks about in Powernomics, which is the doctrine of unequal exchange, where white people got all the wealth because deals would be made and they would get all the good stuff and we would be left with the bad stuff. The civil rights movement was a perfect example of the doctrine of unequal exchange. So you fight and get your head busted in and give up all your businesses. And then you get the right to go to white stores and give them all your money. You get to send your kids to go to white schools and white universities and give them all your money. You get to go live in white neighborhoods and destroy the property values of bad neighborhoods and give all your money to these white neighborhoods, increasing their property values because demand and price are connected, right? And that left you in a situation where since 1968, your wealth has not increased. Well, that is due to the fact that the individuals that were leading this movement, which I don't know, some of them may have been selected, I don't know, did not have enough economic awareness to say, this ain't a good deal for us. This isn't going to work. So they understood a lot of things. Maybe they understood religion, right? Some of them were pastors. Maybe they understood social issues, right? Maybe they were, involved in politics and civics and things like that. All these things are important, but I did not see anybody in there that really understood wealth and was willing to kind of do the deep dive into the economic infrastructure to really understand where the real power resides. Even the Black Panthers didn't seem, again, probably because they leaned a little bit too left. They were taking a little bit too much advice from the Marxists that were talking about revolution and social change, but didn't get good ideas from the people that were more on the capitalist side, meaning the A.G. Gastons of the world. A.G. Gaston was a Black man in Alabama that was worth $50 to $100 million. Maybe a little bit of advice from A.G. Gaston could have helped them figure out how to get the economic power to sustain the movement and make it stronger, right? So what would happen, though, is every now and then you would see some of that magic kind of work out where the civil rights leaders could go to an A.G. Gaston who could sit down and write a check because he understood that your movement can't move forward without somebody writing a check so that Dr. King and Jesse Jackson, all these other individuals can make payroll, right? So it wasn't like it wasn't a complete miss, but it was a bit of a miss in the sense that movement, in my view, was not really a Black movement. It wasn't a black because it was more of a Marxist, communist, leftist movement in blackface, right? It was it was one of those things where these other ideas that came from other people were being sort of pursued, and they said, hey, we can get Black people to take the lead on this so that they can help us achieve our bigger objective and our bigger goal. And that doesn't help you get exactly what you need because Black people have specific needs. We have specific things that we must accomplish. We have specific objectives, right? We got to educate our kids, get our money right, rebuild our families, right? And so that means that the ideas and the solutions that apply in the movements that we believe in must come from us. It must come from you. Because if it comes from you, here's what you're able to do. If it comes from you, you have freedom. Freedom, remember I told you freedom is the cousin of power. Freedom and power are connected. Freedom, wealth, power, all those things are connected, right? So you then have the freedom to explore all the ideas that come to the table. So as a Black man I use that term B1 Black first, right? We put ourselves at the top of the priority list. So as a B1 person, I can sit down with a Democrat and look at their ideas and say, okay, I like that idea. I don't like that idea and pick and choose, right? Then I can sit and talk to a Black Republican and get some of the good ideas that are on that side of the fence, right? And then I can talk to somebody who's not a Democrat or a Republican, right? I can talk to the activists. I can talk to the business owners. I can talk to all the people who want to see the community prosper and allow itself to be diverse and free and not be locked in to any other pre-existing ideology. And then you can pursue the solution. Now, in order to do that, though, you need a base. And that's where you're losing too. You don't have your own base. So if I am Black and I'm trying to figure out, hey, I got ideas that are really good and I want to share them with the world, where can I go share these ideas with the world? Is there a Black-owned media outlet out here that can really help me do this? Well, no, not a BET. No, BET's owned by Viacom, and they're going to make me say, if I won't be able to get anything out there if the Redstone family doesn't approve of it. Do I go over? Maybe I go to CPAC and where the Republicans are, and then they'll let me talk. Well, no. If I disagree with what the Republicans say, then I'm gonna get in trouble. They won't let me on their show anymore. They won't let me on their stage anymore, right? Do I go to maybe the Black News Channel? No, the Black News Channel is not owned by Black people. It's owned by that guy who owns the Jaguars, right? So they're kind of more on the liberal side, right? So what has to occur is this is where your institutions step up. This is where having institutions that you can lean on that can help you pay bills and help you have a platform for your ideas to educate the public in a variety of ways allows you to get things done, right? So ultimately, if you want to know the conclusion of this conversation for today is we must absolutely develop Black institutions, starting with families. So one thing I want you to meditate on this week as we get ready for next week. Next week, we meet for the book club every week. Is I want you to meditate on what's around you and really respect that. Like understand if you got kids in your house, then that's your institution. You're running an institution, and that institution can be a school if you want it to be. If you start educating people in that house, then that's a school. That institution can be it can be a business. It can be whatever it can be a group club, whatever you want it to be. Just be conscious about that and utilize that power. And then also think about Black institutions outside of your household that you believe in and want to support. because that's really what we need in order to fight fire with fire. You have to have this, because if you don't, like, think about it. I'll give you an example. Use my life, for example. Think about the things I say. The awkward position I'm in is that I have enemies on both sides of the aisle. I have Democrats that hate me because they call me all these names. Like, when I don't agree with their agenda, they're like, "Oh, you're a sexist, you're a homophobe, you're whatever," right? And then I have the Republicans that don't like me because they think I'm too black and too liberal or whatever, right? And then white people get mad at me. Black people get mad at me. I gave a speech to a group of white bankers one time, and I started talking about reparations in a very respectful way, and literally 10 of them walked out of the room in the first 10 minutes of the speech. It was terrible, right? And then I have black people that get mad at me, right? That are addicted. They're sort of used to this old way of doing things, and they think I'm a little bit too hard on them or whatever, so they start talking all kind of crazy. And so what happens is, especially in this world, cancel culture kicks in, right? Everybody says, "We're going to cancel you. We're canceling you, Dr. Boyce. We're canceling you." And it doesn't bother me, because you can't cancel a person who writes his own checks. Like, you can't cancel me. Like, no, I really, if you have like there's like all these theories that I'm really owned by somebody else, and that somebody has their hand up my butt like a puppet and they're telling me what to say. I don't know where that comes from, but no, you can't. I'll never fire myself. Like, you can get as mad as you want, but Boyce will never be fired, because I talk to Boyce every morning and he says, "Good job, keep going." Right? My boss says it's okay for me. Like, God can cancel me, like God could kill me, but you can't cancel me. And the reason that you think you can is because you're used to black people not having anything that's actually theirs, right? The first thought you have when I had this back and forth with Bill O'Reilly many years ago, the first thing Bill O'Reilly did was he didn't come after me. He came after my boss at Syracuse. I worked at Syracuse University, and it worked. There was a lot of pressure put on me from above. So that's what I want you to understand, is that it takes time. The reason people don't do it as much is because they either don't know how to do it, they either don't know how to do it, they're afraid to do it, and they don't have the patience to do it, right? Developing institutions requires skill. It requires courage. You got to stop worshiping white people. Like, you got to believe in what you have, and it requires delayed gratification. You got to understand that, yes, you can attach yourself tomorrow to all the bright, shiny things that you would love to be part of. Like, if I go work for that big company, I get to feel like I am somebody. But that's not going to give you real power. That gives you the illusion of power, right? You're borrowing power from somebody else. Building real, authentic power is a long-term process, and it's an intergenerational process in many cases. So as much power as I might have right now, the people I pass my power to when I die are going to have a ton more power than me. So you think that we got something going now. Wait till you see what we have in 50 years or 100 years from now, right? And that's where power comes from in America. Most institutional power is built across people, across time, and across generations. That is in complete contrast to much of what you see in media, where everything is fast and quick and it's instant gratification. Get off of that stuff. That is a drug. I need you to put down the crack pipe of instant gratification and take the time and put in the energy, the consistent effort to build something. Give your kids the skill to build. Teach them to have the courage to build. Courage is connected deeply to self-confidence. If you love who you are, then you're not afraid to detach from everything in the world. And you can literally let go of everything and anybody and be rejected by everyone and know that you still got the sweet spot right there in the seat that you sit in. And then 3, that ability to have that long-term delayed gratification, where I'm brick by brick building something that's going to help me achieve my goal, and I'm going to be consistent, and it's going to be great. And then I'm going to do what Dr. Anderson talks about in this book. I'm going to connect with other people who have institutions, so that over time we build something that becomes a powerhouse. That's where power comes from. That's how it works. And that's on page 32 in Black Labor, White Wealth. All right, guys, I am exhausted, and I'm going to go upstairs with my wife and eat whatever good food she cooked. And I hope that this was beneficial to you. Now, one thing I will tell you is we will meet every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. You can register, and you can go through the whole life class for free if you want to at blackkeystogreatness.com. That's blackkeystogreatness.com. Some of you have asked about the recordings of the book club and everything else. Well, with the Black Business School, we can't give you everything for free. We have to raise money. So one of the things that we're asking is, look, if you want all the recordings, we will put a price on it, and it will give you a discount. And if you'd like to buy them, you can. If you come live, it's free. The recordings, there is a fee, and that's so we can raise money because we're building our own university. We want a school system that goes all across the globe, and that requires money. And we can't go to corporations because that's going to distract from the mission. We can't go to the government. We don't want to do that because that distracts from the mission. So we have to do this ourselves within our community. So that's what it is. That's me being transparent, laying it out to you. But again, I don't want you to participate in anything we have going on in the Black Business School unless you absolutely are completely convinced that whatever you did with us made a huge difference in your life. If you don't feel that way, then no hard feelings. We'll give you your money back. But if you benefit from being here, we hope that you'll support what we're doing because we're really, really working hard at this thing. And also, I appreciate those of you who stepped up for us so far. We love you, and I'm gonna go rest because I need to go take a nap now because my brain is kind of exhausted. So please have a good night, everybody, and I'll see you guys next week. So take care. Bye bye.